Hi, folks. Somebody, I think in North Carolina, got a hold of us, want to know where I acquired the sheep wagon. Well, for those of you who don't know, some people call it a sheep camp. And this is what the herders stayed in the northern range. And because of the weather, they had a wagon to live in. And those of you who've been to Ireland can tell that it's from the old gypsy wagons. And it was made to this size. The part that's original on this wagon is from here down, between here and the running gear. This is the hand forged door. And the way sheep wagons are designed is they have a Dutch door because the herder would sit inside there and drive the team when he pulled his camp. And that is a hand-forged handle right there, which I think is pretty cool. Now on the side, you'll see a handle here, and this was actually a brake. And there was a hand brake on the inside of the wagon that the herder could run when he needed a brake. And he could store things that he didn't need inside out here. And there's 3 storage bins on the outside. And the way it works is the tongue is set up for pulling it with an outfit, or you can put a tongue on it, bolt a tongue on, which I've done, and pull it with a team. In Buffalo, Wyoming, 94, 95, something like that, they had the 100th anniversary of the sheep wagon. And so everybody brought their wagons down and put them in the parade. And there was a lot of wagons. It was pretty neat. And I actually used my Belgian team to pull my wagon. And little history is that the herders, a lot of times, were Basque. And they would paint the Basque colors on the wagon. And then, too, to break up the monotony, they'd have different colors on the wagon. And then you could see it from a distance. And a lot of reasons. And some had murals painted inside. Nowadays, they're fixing up pretty fancy. But this one here, someday we'll tear into it and overhaul it. But to me, the part that was really neat was that this is the running gear here. Axles and wheels. And I'll just say traditionally, when they come in off the range and they'd go to headquarters for the winter, they would raise this part up, that's oak incidentally, jack it up and then get the running gear off from under it. And then a hay rack was put on the running gear, and then they fed the sheep all winter with that same running gear. Then in the spring, of course, they'd jack up and put it back under it. So I always thought that was pretty smart. And I've in fact used this running gear for a hay rack. And the herders, a lot of them were Basque. And when I was in Montana, we ran 6,000 ewes, and I had Peruvians and Spaniards. So what's happened is nowadays they have an association. There's one in Livingston, Montana, I think, and there used to be one outside of Sacramento. And then that's who you contacted when you needed herders. And then that office there would do all the paperwork, get the visas and everything that they needed, bring the herder, put him on a bus, and send him to your bus stop in your town. And then you were there to meet him. And that's the way it worked. And they had a book about that thick of the things that the ranch owner was responsible for as far as keeping him in water and food and stuff. Because I was a camp tender, which means I hauled the groceries to him. And they pretty much stay out there all the time unless you take them to town by mistake, which I'd tried to do. But it was funny to me, if I took a herder to town, try to give him a break, about 2, 3 o'clock he'd start getting twitchy, I could tell. He just had to get back, because they're like a lot of cowboys. They think if they leave the ranch, everything will drop dead. Which, in the sheep world, that can happen. But anyway, this is kind of the overall of what a sheep wagon is. Now, there's a lot of people that contact us about coming and staying here. We're not ready for that yet, but we have been known to put guests in the Sheep Wagon, and they do just fine, as long as you're 5'10" or shorter. But the only thing missing out of this is the stove, and there's a small stove that sits on the inside, and it's got the stack going out the top because it was pretty cold in that country. Now this particular wagon has a plate on it that says Douglas, Wyoming on it. So, and then when I was underneath it working on it, I saw a guy cut a knife in there in 1921. So that just kind of gives you some kind of history on it. And in the South, back in the turn of the century when they had sheep wagons, in the Southwest, the herders used burros and teepees. They didn't have teams. They just walked along or rode their horse, and these burros would carry all their food and their camp. And that's how you knew the difference between a northern herder and a southern herder. And on that note, same way with the chuck wagons. The chuck wagons on the northern range had an actual stove. And it was the cowboys' job to take it off and set it on the ground when they got to camp. And that was the last thing they put on the wagon when they pulled out. And in the Southwest, they used the cast iron pots. What's the name of that kind of cooking?
Dutch oven.
Dutch oven cooking. And so they'd have a fire built on the ground and 5 or 6 pots hanging there. And that's how you knew the difference between a northern wagon and a southern wagon. And of course the fly, which was the tarp that came out to give them shade and or protection from the wind or rain, a lot of big northern outfits had an actual full outsized big tent to go inside because of the weather. And then they just put a fly up in the south. But anyway, this one came out of Buffalo, Wyoming's where I bought it, and it was made in Douglas, Wyoming. And that's what they're all about. I'm kind of proud of it.
Now, because I know our viewers, they're going to ask how the holes got in the side.
Well, I got to tell you, there's a knack to unloading these off of a flatbed truck or a trailer. And since my bride is pushing me, I'll tell you, I rolled this thing twice, unloading it. Because I used fulcrum and leverage, and it got a little carried away with the leverage part. That's how the holes got in the side. So, there you go. Thank you. Okay. Now, folks, something you're going to see me using quite a bit, because I'm about to interrupt Chinako in grade school. And I use burlap hobbles. The number one reason is they're soft, and you can't get in trouble with them. And I have soft cotton rope I also use. And the way you make them, thanks to Wally Wines up in Montana, is you take a gunny sack, Hessian as you call it in Australia, I think, and you cut the seam on it. So now you got a big flat piece of burlap, and you fold it corner to corner like it look like a diaper. Then you roll it up. Roll it up just like this. Then you take your pocket knife and you start in the middle, and you take that rolled part and you just cut a hole straight through it. Then you hold it open like that. And all you do is take the end of the burlap and run it through the hole. And that's what creates this knot, so to speak. Now I've already got, I'll show you what I mean. Down here, here's one with a hole in it. And I do 5 total. So there's the hole. Take the end of the burlap and stick it through the hole and pull it all the way through. That's all there is to it. So now you got a nice pair of hobbles, and you tie a square knot. And just for the sake of knowing, if that square knot tightens down too tight, just get a pair of pliers and you can untie these pretty easy. If you can get a hold of any part of the bag, you can get the knot loose. So that's the story on burlap hobbles. And they're quite common. Pretty simple. In case you're wondering, again, if you pretend this is the burlap bag, lay it out flat, and just fold it corner to corner like that. That's how you do it. Then start on the inside and roll it up. Then take your knife and cut it right here and run the end through it. Then cut it again, run the end through it, cut it again. And then you'll have a set of hobbles. I think I've mentioned it before, but these scarves, our friend in Australia makes them, and boy, they're whatever this material is, it's the best material there is for a nice winter scarf. Now, folks, somebody got a hold of me wanting to know how I build my roping dummies. Well, I've got one of them here that I use, and I don't build them. This says Burrow right on it, and you get it at Home Depot. So you just buy one of those, and whatever angle you want the head to be at, either Angus or Charolais or Bramer, you cut that much off the block at an angle, and that'll set the height of your head up. The high-tech part is I nail a 2x6 underneath so I can have something to nail to in the front. That's pretty much how we do this one. The big roping dummy, I know that's the one he's probably talking about, but somebody left the gate open and it's gone. So when I get it back, I'll show you that one. Thank you. Folks, this is how I do the burlap hobbles. I just grab them high, get below the knee on the cannon bone, put the other foot where I want it, then I twist them. That's the twist. Now it's a nice straight tight rope or burlap between the legs. That's what they look like. He's going to spend a lot of time in these because the way the progression works on hobbling is when he's got the spade bit on, I'll be able to hobble him and he'll stand. Now what you got to know is that what I don't allow during this time is for him to put his head down. That's unacceptable. So he's going to learn over time to keep his head up. And if you ever watch a good pack string, they're trained to do that. And the reason why we do that is because if he gets his head down, the next thing he'll think of is leaving. And he'll hop. So he doesn't get to put his head down. And I want to do him where he's not tied to anything. Plus I can do it tied to the trailer if I want. And he'll learn to stand quiet. So these work really good for hobbles around camp. Of course you can't carry them on your saddle, but I use a piece of rope for that. But the point is his goal is to stand. Now here's the biggest mistake people make. When I go to saddling this horse, and you're going to see him saddle a lot of times, my saddle's going to be right here. You don't put hobbles on a horse with their head not tied and go walk in the tack room and get your saddle. That's a big mistake. You don't leave him during this period of the training. You stay with him until he gets comfortable. And that's just how it's done. That's all there is to it. So this is one of the 7,000 things you're going to see me do with this colt. Thank you.